Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program.
Science and technology hold the key to the progress and development of any nation. It has always been an integral part of Indian culture. Natural philosophy, as it was termed in those ancient times, was pursued vigorously at institutions of higher learning. The Indian Renaissance, which coincided with our independence struggle at the dawn of 1900s, witnessed great strides made by Indian scientists in the fields of science, astronomy, healthcare, environment, medicine, defense, and whatnot. With that premise, Radioscope during the next 30 minutes will take you all on a journey of scientific understanding of nature, unfurling recent developments in the field of science and technology.
Let's begin with news highlights in the field of science and technology with Siddharth. The Indian Space Research Organization (ISRO) on 2nd April successfully carried out the landing experiment of the Reusable Launch Vehicle Technology Demonstration (RLVTD) at the Aeronautical Test Range in Challakere, Chitradurga. Indian Air Force's Chinook helicopter was used to drop the RLVTD from a 4.5 kilometer altitude. A 9-day mega military exercise was held in Pune with a greater aim to expand their overall military cooperation. A number of new generation equipment manufactured in India is being used at the exercise to give a feel of their efficacy to the troops of the participating nations. An exhibition of indigenously developed military platforms was organized on March 29 by the Indian industry to showcase the country's defense manufacturing capabilities to the visiting delegates. In this regard, Defense Research and Development Organization (DRDO) demonstrated few equipments like UXORR, Unexploded Ordnance Handling Robot, Daksha, which can be used to handle and identify explosives, ROV, Surveillance Remotely Operated Vehicle, etc. Well, those were news highlights. We hope you enjoyed this science tidbits. Dear listeners, National Technology Day is observed every year on 11th of May as a reminder of the anniversary of the Pokhran 2 tests. But the main purpose of the day was to recognize scientific and technological achievements. In this regard, let's listen a talk on the topic India's achievements in the field of technology in different decades by Dr. Deepti Sidhaye, faculty member, Department of Physics, Savitribai, Phule, Pune University.
In the decade of the 1950s, in 1954, Homi Bhabha established the Atomic Energy Establishment, which after his death was renamed as the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. And then in 1958, India's scientific policy was declared. This was the first science policy, and it placed a strong emphasis on fundamental research in almost every field of science. India's first digital computer, which is abbreviated as TIFR-AC, it was built by TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, and that was also launched in this particular decade. Now the next decade, the decade of 1960s, one very important milestone is the birth of ISRO. ISRO, which is Indian Space Research Organization, is instrumental in making India empowered in the field of space science. In 1962, Jawaharlal Nehru established the Indian National Committee for Space Research under the Department of Atomic Energy, and this was renamed as ISRO Indian Space Research Organization in 1969. So, in fact, we can say that the age of rocketry began in India. The first rocket launch facility was established in India by Vikram Sarabhai in 1963 at Thumba. This decade also proved to be the harbinger of Green Revolution in India under the able guidance of M.S. Swaminathan. In the next decade, that is the decade of 1970s, one very important milestone was the successful conducting of India's first nuclear weapon test in Pokhran, Rajasthan. It was conducted on May 18th in 1974, and in fact the test was given the code name Smiling Buddha. And after this test, India became the 6th nuclear state in the world to successfully test a nuclear bomb outside of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, which are basically US, Soviet Union, Britain, France and China. India's first unmanned satellite named Aryabhat was also launched in this same decade, and again another very significant achievement. To talk about biological sciences and medicine, in 1978 Dr. Mukherjee became the first physician in India and the second in the world to create a test tube baby, and this baby was given the name Durga. The decade of 1980s can be said as the beginning of age of missile technology in India, and our late President APJ Abdul Kalam was the program director for the Integrated Guided Missile Program by DRDO. This was launched in 1983, and under this program, missiles called Prithvi, Trishul, Akash, Nag and Agni were produced. There was also an achievement pertaining to the fields of environmental science, geology, oceanography, because India built its scientific base station, which was called Dakshin Gangotri, in Antarctica, and this was just 2,500 kilometers from the South Pole. It was shut down after a few years, but now another station called Maitri has been built there, which is basically India's first permanent station in Antarctica. This decade also saw the beginning of age of communication technology, and now we cannot imagine our life without mobile phones and computers. I can say it was a beginning of an age of communication which impacted our lives in every which way. The decade of 1990s began with the creation of India's supercomputer. You can say it was a homemade supercomputer, Param 8000. It was created in 1991 by CDAC, which is the Center for Development of Advanced Computing. This decade also saw the beginning of use of mobile phones, and then at the end of this decade, that is in 1998, on 11th of May, Buddha smiled again in India when nuclear tests, which are also called Pokhran 2, were conducted in Pokhran. Now coming to the decades of 2000s, we were having several achievements in the field of defense where light combat aircrafts like Tejas were being developed. In space science, a very huge milestone was Chandrayaan-1, India's first lunar mission. This India became the 4th country to plant a flag on the surface of the moon. If this decade talked about lunar mission, the next decade talked about Mars mission. On November 5th, 2013, Israel launched a spacecraft to Mars. It was called Mars Orbital Mission or Mangalyaan. With this, Israel became the 4th space agency to send a spacecraft into Martian orbit. The end of this decade saw prevalence of COVID-19, but India successfully developed vaccines not only for itself, but these vaccines were also distributed to several countries in the world. The beginning of this decade saw the world coming out of shadow of pandemic and regaining its position on the path of technological progress.
This was just a glimpse of some of India's achievements in the field of technology in different decades. by Dr. Deepti Sidhaye, Faculty Member, Department of Physics, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Science is constantly evolving, helping us to understand the world better. Throughout history, some of the greatest inventors and scientists were born in the month of May. Their contributions to science had changed the way we understand and perceive the world. But most importantly, these scientists inspire us to strive for better, question more, and trust our instincts to reach our goals. Here are a few famous scientists born in the month of May. Ronald Ross was born May 13, 1857 at Almora in India. At the age of 14, Ross won a prize in mathematics and was presented the book Orbs of Heaven, which sparked his interest in the field of science. He won Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1902. Ross is known for his outstanding research work on malaria-causing parasites in mosquitoes. He discovered malarial parasites in the salivary glands of mosquitoes. Second, Venkatraman Ramakrishnan was born May 18, 1952 at Chidambaram, India. His works in field of structural biology and physics. He got Nobel Prize for his work in the field of chemistry in 2009. He received Padma Vibhushan in 2010 and Knight Bachelor in 2012. Ramakrishnan is famous for his studies on atomic structure and function of the ribosome, a complex molecule found in all living cells. Biodiversity is the living fabric of our planet. It underpins human well-being in the present and in the future, and its rapid decline threatens nature and people alike. According to the Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services released in 2019 by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services at UNESCO, the main global drivers of biodiversity loss are climate change, overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, and urbanization. The global report demonstrated the responsibility of human activities in the loss of biodiversity, which amounted to 75% of terrestrial ecosystems. Many solutions exist. Now it's time to act for biodiversity. The United Nations has proclaimed May 22 the International Day for Biological Diversity to increase understanding and awareness of biodiversity issues. In this regard, let's listen to a talk on the International Day for Biological Diversity by Dr. Anjali Kulkarni, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, Savitribai Phule, Pune University.
The term biological diversity or biodiversity as it is more commonly known was first coined by Walter Rosen in 1985. It is defined as the variety of life on Earth, the natural patterns it forms, and the genetic variation present in them. Currently, about 1.75 million species of organisms have been identified on our beautiful planet. These include complex plants and animals, as well as minutest of microbes and other simple organisms. And yet, millions of species in the faraway corners of the earth remain to be discovered. All the organisms within an ecosystem are interconnected. So if the diversity of organisms within an ecosystem declines, so does the ecosystem's ability to function and survive. Unfortunately, the number of species is dwindling very fast due to certain human activities. UNEP's Global Environment Outlook 4
recently stated that the species extinction rate is occurring at 100 times the natural rate, which is a frightening event. Thus, public outreach and especially the student outreach activities to underline the importance of biodiversity from a young age have become very important. In year 2000, the United Nations General Assembly officially proclaimed May 22 to be the International Day of Biodiversity and declared a common convention of biological diversity. The three major goals of this CBD are: first, the conservation of biological diversity; second, the sustainable use of the components of biological diversity; and third, fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. Many countries all over the world participate in biodiversity related activities and help in the conservation of biodiversity rich protected areas and hotspots. Presently, there are 36 official biodiversity hotspots all around the world. Every year, there is a specific declared theme for International Day of Biological Diversity, and all the global resources are pulled together to work towards that aim. This year's theme is From Agreement to Action, Build Back Biodiversity. It includes the ambitious target of protecting at least 30% of the planet's land, inland waters and sea by the year 2030, and of recognizing and respecting the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities. It aims to cut global food waste in half and significantly reduce overconsumption and waste generation. It also aims to reduce use of excessive fertilizers and pesticides. Let me tell you about two women biodiversity warriors from India who have already implemented all of the above points in their life's mission even before they were articulated by the UN. First example from the state of Maharashtra is of Padma Shri Ms. Rahibai Popere, commonly known as Seed Mother or Bija Mata. She has been conserving indigenous seeds of native crop species since last many years because they are not only drought and disease resistant but are nutritive and retain the soil fertility without needing chemical fertilizers and excessive water. Rahibai has conserved several native crops including 15 varieties of rice, 9 varieties of pigeon pea and 60 varieties of vegetables besides many oilseeds, and she offers them free to the interested farmers. The only condition is that they must return twice the quantity of seeds that they had borrowed. Another example is of the tribal lady Lahari Bai from Madhya Pradesh. She has conserved more than 150 varieties of millet seeds on her small farm and house single-handedly. She has been named as the brand ambassador for the International Year of Millets being celebrated in 2023. Kudos to Lahari Bai. Let us all get inspired by these ladies and strive to do our two bits in the mission of building back biodiversity.
World AIDS Vaccine Day, also known as HIV Vaccine Awareness Day, is observed annually on May 18. HIV vaccine mark the day of promoting the continued urgent need for a vaccine to prevent HIV infection and AIDS. In this regard, let's listen a telephonic interview of Dr. Sanjeev Chincholikar by Siddharth, Bendre. Welcome listeners. Today we have Dr. Sanjeev Chincholikar, a well-known personality, to have an interaction on the topic HIV Vaccination Day. He is MBBS from SRTR Medical College, Ambazugai. Did MD in Community Medicine. He's having 31 years teaching and research experience. The first question to you, sir, about this HIV Vaccination Day. What is the background of World HIV Vaccination Day?
World AIDS Vaccine Day, also known as HIV Vaccine Awareness Day, was first observed on May 18th, 1998, to remember the address given by Mr. Clinton on 18th May 1997 regarding the search for vaccination as the only source of prevention of infection, and also to commemorate the anniversary of first international AIDS vaccine trial which took place in 1997.
What is the significance of HIV Vaccination Awareness Day?
Effective vaccination is yet to be developed. It is a chance to thank the volunteers, community members, health professionals and scientists working together to find a safe and effective preventive HIV vaccination.
Sir, how many types of vaccinations are available now?
At present, there is no vaccine available for HIV infection. World Health Organization is working with countries and partners to improve global vaccination coverage for life-threatening diseases. So vaccines recommended for HIV-infected individuals are inactivated influenza vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine, hepatitis A and B vaccine, tetanus toxoid, meningococcal vaccine and human papillomavirus. So these vaccines are recommended.
Further, I want to ask you, why there is no effective vaccine against HIV?
This virus is very unstable. It changes its color. This virus mutates very rapidly.
How can we protect ourselves from HIV or AIDS in the absence of vaccine?
Prevention is the only thing what we can do, and we have to take proper preventive measures against HIV. The best way to protect yourself from HIV AIDS is to practice safer sexes by using condoms. Getting tested regularly for HIV is a very important thing. Avoiding sharing needles. So this is very important for HIV prevention.
So that is all important information as far as HIV Vaccination Day is concerned.
Yes, yes.
So on behalf of All India Radio, we are very much thankful to you for sparing your precious time. That was a telephonic interview of Dr. Sanjeev Chincholikar on the topic World AIDS Vaccine Day by Siddharth Bendre. Listeners, pollination is a fundamental process for the survival of our ecosystems. Nearly 90% of the world's wild flowering plant species depend entirely, or at least in part, on animal pollination, along with more than 75% of the world's food crops and 35% of global agricultural land. Not only do pollinators contribute directly to food security, but they are key to conserving biodiversity. To raise awareness of the importance of pollinators, the threats they face, and their contribution to sustainable development, the UN designated 20 May as World Bee Day. The goal is to strengthen measures aimed at protecting bees and other pollinators, which would significantly contribute to solving problems related to the global food supply and eliminate hunger in developing countries. In this regard, let's listen a talk on World Bee Day by Peeyush Pahade, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Zoology, H.V. Desai College, Pune.
There are various types of bees. Around 20,000 varieties of bees are present. These bees belong to a subgroup of insects called Hymenoptera because they have membranous wings. The world has around 20,000 varieties of bees. India alone has 4,000 varieties of bees. Bees are of various types. We know bees as only honeybees. Bees can be of solitary type, colonial type, nomadic bees. There are bees on their appearance like longhorn bees, yellow-face bees, resin bees, scissor bees, etc. There also are bees called as mourning bees, and these are parasitic. Now, how is the life of the bees that we need to understand? Here we are talking about honeybees. Honeybees have an excellent colony organization. Bees are extremely important for the ecosystem. They are greatest pollinators. They flourish the ecosystem. They promote the wildlife growth. They bring up species richness and abundance through the process of pollination. Wildlife habitat become better because the seeds increase. When the seeds increase, there is lot of food for the animals, and therefore you are able to see bees are important. Bees themselves are food for other animals such as birds, and bees promote biodiversity. When we talk of the other aspects of bees, we need to understand what is affecting the bees. Human beings are the worst enemies of bees, despite the fact that bees are the best friends of humans. And therefore, we need to take care of the bees. If we want to grow, we need bees. We need to create avenues for honeybees to stay so that more and more honeybees can be grown.
You just heard a talk on World Bee Day by Peeyush Pahade, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Zoology, H.V. Desai College, Pune. Friends, the journey through the May edition of National Science magazine Radioscope draws his curtain here. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. You just heard National Science magazine program Radioscope, narrated by Siddharth Bendre, scripted and produced by Dhiraj, Kundlik, Kedari.
Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program.